Hello, my dear student. Welcome to another edition of your mathematics lesson. Today, we're going to take another fresh and new interesting topic that is arithmetic of finance. And what we are going to learn first under this main topic is simple interest. So let's begin. After completing the very lesson today, my dear student will be able to explain the term interest and they also be able to solve problems involving simple interest. These are the two things I hope my dear student will be able to do after completing the very lesson today. So as usual in a favorite segment of the lesson, my dear student, today I'm happy to give you another special group of numbers and this group of numbers are called the happy numbers. I will explain with examples what are happy numbers after completing my lesson today, so don't go away. To begin the lesson, my dear student, let me first explain what is interest. Interest is the money earns after investing money in a saving account or in a bank. So that money that you get on top after investing your money in a bank or saving money in a bank after a period of time, that money that you have on top is what we refer as interest. Interest is usually paid annually and is calculated as either as simple interest or as a compound interest. For the sake of this very lesson, the interest that you are going to learn, that is how to calculate that interest, is the very first one, simple interest. Later on in our next lesson, we'll learn how to find or calculate the compound interest. So let us just move and learn how to find this simple interest. So it says the simple interest denoted by capital letter I is given by this simple formula. I equals to PRT all over 100. That is P times R times T divided by 100. Where this P is the amount of money invested or saved, R is the rate of interest the bank charges or offered, that is the R, while T is the duration in the years. So when you substitute in this simple formula and simplify, what you now have in the end would now be the amount of interest that money will now generate after a period of T years. Let us just move. But the amount, that is the value of the investment, that will now be the total amount. That is the interest plus the original money invested. So that amount, if we are to find it, denoted by capital letter A, after T years, it will now be given by this simple formula. A, that is for the amount, equals to P plus PRT all over 100. You can see this PRT all over 100 is exactly the formula for your interest. So which means the final amount in the account will now be the original money invested, that is the P, plus the interest and or generated. We are going to take examples how we can now make use of this to it depends on the question and find either the interest or the amount. So let us move. Example number 1 says find the simple interest paid on this 6,000 naira that was invested for 3 years at 15% per annum. Solution to this very problem is the interest that we asked to find. So let me first write the formula for the simple interest, that is I equals to PRT all over 100. So what I'm going to do from my question here, I'll now find what will now be P, what will be R, what will be T. Let me do that. So my P, that is the amount of money invested or saved. It is this 6,000. Let me write it. It's 6,000 my P. Next is my T, that is capital letter T. The time it says for 3 years. So T is now equals to 3. And the R will now be 15%. That is the rate of interest. So I will now substitute in this very formula to get my I. So my I, that is the simple interest, will now be equals to 6,000 for P multiplied by 15, that is your R, multiplied by 3, that is your T, divided by 100. And simplifying this, if you done correctly, you now have these two zeros canceling these two zeros, you now have 16 multiplied by 15 multiplied by 3. And if this multiplication is done correctly, you now have 2,700. So this would now be the interest this money will now generate in 3 years if the bank offers this 15%. So let us move and take another example. Example number 2, it says a man borrowed this 40,000 naira for 2 years at this rate of 30% per annum simple interest. The question asked is to find the amount required to repay the loan at the end of those 2 years. So solution to this very problem. Let's just now find the amount is required to pay. That will now be the total money you now pay the bank. So that amount will now be given by the formula, that is the value A equals to P plus a PRT over 100. So there I will get my P, my R, and my T. My P from this very question is the money borrowed, which is 40,000 naira. Then the T is this 2 years. The man wanted to pay back the loan after 2 years, so T is now 2. And the R is the rate of interest. The bank charges 30%. So R will now be 30. So I'm going to substitute in this formula to find the final amount, that is E. So substituted in this formula, P is now 40,000. Look at it. Plus PRT, so I have 40,000 times 30 times 2 all over 100. So simplifying these two zeros, cancelling these two zeros. So in the air, you now have the 40,000, which I copied here, plus this 40,000 now reduced to 400 times 30 times 2. This is what I'm having. So multiplying before the addition, you now have this 400 times 30 times 2 gives you 24,000. Look at it. And adding 24,000 and this 40,000 gives you 64,000. So what the man is now going to pay the bank after 2 years is 64,000. So let's just move and take another example. Example number 3 says, what rate of interest will yield this 1,200 on a principal of $800 in 4 years? So solution to this very problem, if I go back to the question, it says what rate of interest. So there we have to find the rate of interest the bank either charges or offered. But what happened? The final amount is now this 1,200, and what was the deposited or invested initially? It was this $800. But this happens after 4 years. So solution to this very problem, what we now do is to write the formula for finding the amount. Of course, we have the amount. That is the value of the investment is this 1,200, but the P is 800. The amount is now 1,200. The time is 4 years, is the only R that we were looking for. So substituted in this very formula, we now have A 1,200 equals to P 800 plus PRT over 100. I now have 800 times R times 4 all over 100. So I continue. So simplifying this very fraction, the two zeros in 100 will now cancel these two zeros in 800. So there you now have 8 times 4. This gives you 32. Then times R is now 32R. Remember, we are targeting to get R, the rate of interest there. So there we now collect like terms. The 800 now shifted to the left-hand side becomes minus. So when subtracted from this 1,200, you now have 400. So 400 is now equals to 32R. So there we divide both sides by 32 to get R. So I'm going to now divide 400 by 32. If this division is done correctly, you now have 12.5%. This will now be the rate of interest. For this 800 to reach or to become this 1,200 in 4 years, this will now be the rate of interest, 12.5%. So let's just move and take another example. Example number 4, it says calculate the simple interest on this 10,000 naira that was invested for 3 months at 20% per annum. You see the rate of interest is per annum, but here we have the time in just a month. So solution to this very problem, writing the formula for calculating simple interest, I equals to PRT all over 100. So there I'll get to my P, which would now be 10,000, of course, the money invested or borrowed. In this case, it is invested. So 10,000 is my P. My R is 20%. Look at it in the question. And my time is now going to be, look at it, it's in 3 months. Interest is usually calculated per annum. As you can even see, the rate is also per annum. So which means this 3 months will now convert it to just a fraction of a year. So this 3 months is now going to be when it is now taken as fraction of a year, is now going to be 3 over 12. It is 12 months into a year, and you have this just duration of 3 months. So it is now going to be 3 over 12. So we now substitute. So substituted in this very formula, I have my P 10,000 multiplied by R 20 multiplied by T. Look at it, it's now times 3 over 12 all over 100. Look at it. So it's this that I'm going to simplify to get my I. When you do all this simplification correctly, this is what you are going to have as 500 naira. So this will now be the interest. This 10,000 will now end in just 3 months. 100 naira. Let's just take the final example. Example number 5, it says Mr. and Mrs. Musa are couples. Mr. Musa, that is the husband, invested this 20,000 naira in a bank A that offers Y% simple interest per annum. While the wife, that is the Mrs. Musa, invested 25,000 naira in another bank B that offers 1.5% per annum simple interest. So the question asked here if those couples receive a total of 4,600 naira as interest from the two banks. The question asked here is finding the value of Y, and they receive this interest after 2 years. So solution to this very problem, what we now do, just write the formula for finding interest, which is I equals to PRT all over 100. So what you now do, as these two different people invested in different banks and invested a different amount. So what you now do, you now find the interest for the husband, that is Ms. Musa, in bank A. You also now find the interest for the wife, that is Mrs. Musa, in bank B. Then you now add the two interests. It will give you this 4,600 because it says the couples received a total of this 4,600 as interest. So let me do that. Let me start with Mr. Musa. So interest for this Mr. Musa will now be equals to, substituted in this very formula, the amount he invested, 20,000, multiplied by the rate his bank offers, Y%, multiplied by the duration, type this is 2 years given in the question. So reducing this to simpler form gives you just this value 400Y. Look at it, 400Y. When you cancel these two zeros in 100 with these two zeros, you now have remaining 200 times Y times 2 is what gives you this 400Y. So let me just move and find interest for the wife, that is Mrs. Musa. Interest for the wife, that is Mrs. Musa, I'm going to substitute in this simple formula. The amount she is invested, that is 25,000, and her bank offers 1.5%, and for the same period, 2 years. So substituting there, I'm going to have her interest, that is 25,000 multiplied by 1.5, that is the rate of interest, multiplied by 2, the duration, that is the time, divided by 100. And reducing this to 2 zeros, meaning cancelling 2 zeros in 100 with the 2 zeros. So you now have 250 multiplied by 1.5 multiplied by 2 multiplied there. If that multiplication is done correctly, you now have 750Y. So what do we now do? The question says that the two couples, that is the couples, receive this total amount as interest, 4,600. So let me just get the total interest received by the two people. So total interest will now be equals to interest for Mr. Musa, which is 400Y, plus the interest for the wife, which is 750Y. So let me do that. So I'm going to have 400Y plus 750Y, addition of this correctly, and substituting the total interest with this 4,600, you now have 4,600 equals to 1,150Y. This 1,150 is a result of adding 400 and 750. So there, to get to Y, I'll divide both sides by the coefficient, which is 1,150. So there I'm getting my Y as 4,600 divided by 1,150. If this division is done correctly, your Y is now going to be just 4. So the value of Y, that is the rate of interest the bank A offers, is now 4%. With this, I have come to the end of this very lesson, my dear student. I hope you find it resourceful. With the few examples given, you'll be able to calculate the simple interest. Thank you for your attention, and let me just move to the last segment. Maths is fun, and explain what are happy numbers. So to test if a number is happy, what you need to do, these are just the two steps. One, you now replace the number. That very number, you now replace it by sum of the squares of its digit. That is, if the digits are there in the number, you now find the square of each digit and add the result. So now continue doing the same process above. If this number continue in this very process end at 1, then that very number is happy, which means it's not all the numbers that are happy. There are just some out of the numbers you know that are happy. And it is those numbers that when you do these 3 steps, when it ends at 1, then that number is happy. Let's just take examples of happy number. One of the happy number is 23. So if we are to do this testing of these happy numbers, that means we have to replace this number by the result of 2 square and 3 square added together, just like our C. 2 square plus 3 square. What will now be the result? So I'm now replacing this very number by the result. 2 square will be 4. 3 square will be 9. And adding 4 and 9 gives me 13. So I'll continue. If I didn't see 1, I'll continue. So this number also, I'll now find it is square. That is 1 square plus 3 square. 1 square will be 1, 3 square will be 9. So the result will now be 10. So I'll continue. I will now take 1 square and 0 square. So 1 square, that will give me 1. 0 square, that will give me 0. So adding 1 and 0 gives me 1 finally. So you can see this 23 end at 1 by doing this process, which means 23 is a happy number. Let me give you other happy numbers for you to test and confirm. Other happy numbers include the 7 is happy, 13 is happy, 19 is happy, 28 is happy, 44 is happy, and 49. And there are many other happy numbers. I just give you some. You can test and see whether they will end at this number 1. Thank you for your attention. We see more of these interesting things in mathematics in our subsequent lessons.